Placing too much emphasis on theory and technique while learning songs. Problem here is that I missed the big picture of how skills connect to actual music. Trying to understand the why this work, how this work. If you get too obsessed with the why and the how things work, you miss the big picture, because remember that music is art. Terrible advice I gave myself. So what you can do instead is to, after 22 years of learning and studying piano by ear, I've discovered some things that I wish I knew back then when I was starting out, as it would have allowed me to learn faster, develop better confidence and playing habits. Today, I'm going to share with you 8 mistakes that I made when I was starting out, and if I had the opportunity to do it differently, what I would do. And tell you what, these 8 things aren't what you think they are, so be sure to stick around to the end. Mistake number 1, comparing myself to other pianists. And the problem here is that it led me to practice the wrong things, which slowed my growth and spiked a lot of frustrating days. So what I'll do differently today is I would set one personal skill target per month, tied to my current level. So one thing that I'm shooting for, right, each month. Use reference players for inspiration, not for measurement. So instead of looking at other players and comparing yourself, use them as a source of inspiration. Review monthly to keep your goals aligned with your sound. It's important to think about where you want to go. How do you want to sound? What style of music you want to play? And ensure that the things you're practicing are aligned with those goals. We all fall for that comparison trick, right? Especially in the days of YouTube, where you have access to all the best players in the world. It's easy to be crippled and it's easy to start measuring and comparing, but it's very important to not do that from early. And I know subconsciously it happens, it seeps in. Your mind starts playing tricks and games on you. But if you can block that stuff out, it really will benefit you in the long run, because learning piano, especially by ear, really requires you to develop a sense of confidence in your own abilities, in your own taste, in your own creativity. And you can't really do that if you're comparing yourself with others. Number 2 mistake I made as a young pianist is treating the piano as a sprint, not as a lifelong practice. I rushed, I got discouraged, and I missed the joy of steady progress. In my mind, when I was starting out, I was like, man, in 2 to 3 years, I'm going to be able to play all these fancy chords and songs, and I'm going to be able to play for the service, and I'm going to be able to play for conferences and all these things. And when it didn't happen, I got discouraged. It felt like I just wanted to give up because I had unrealistic expectation. And so I wish I knew that I would be at this for 22 years and counting. It would have prepared me differently mentally, right? But just, I wouldn't have known that then. And so I'm telling you now, if you feel the need to rush through this, if you feel the need that you need to be here in a year or here in 2 years, just you're creating these arbitrary numbers, it will affect your mental state and really how you show up to practice piano on a daily basis. So what are some practical things you can do instead, right? Plan it yearly, work weekly, and practice daily in focus blocks. So you're planning. And this is what I offer over at pianolessonwithwarren.com. I offer a fully practice path program reversed engineered for daily practicing that will go 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. It's designed to take you from beginner to advanced. You want to use clear milestones, learning songs, right? Reaching certain tempo milestones with your scales, arpeggios, block chord, broken chords, and be able to develop steady but clean technique. You'd be surprised how much of your progress is being held back from a lack of technique. Your hands aren't equipped to execute the things that you're hearing. So this should help. You want to also celebrate micro wins to reinforce your consistency. Treat yourself. Don't just be hammer, 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 hammer. Treat yourself, take little breaks, and celebrate your skills, because you don't want to lead to burnout. Remember, we're running a marathon here, so we got to pace ourselves. Another mistake I made, and luckily I was able to correct this fairly early on, But the mistake is to go at it alone without a teacher or without a feedback loop. For my first 2 to 3 years of learning piano, I was kind of doing it on my own, picking up a few things from my keyboard player at church, but for the most part, I was at it alone. The problem that led to, I built a lot of bad habits, insufficient techniques that took much longer to unlearn than it did to learn. And that's the problem. You don't know what you don't know. So if you're using bad fingerings, bad posture, you're sitting wrong, you're approaching the way you're using chords the wrong way, or you're resolving things, there's so many opportunities to develop bad habits, bad techniques. Some of these can lead to chronic pain, tendonitis, shoulder problems, back problems, right? And so the sooner you can get some practical tips, some practical advice, the sooner you can get professional help, whether it be, and by professional, I simply mean somebody who knows more than you, somebody who's been at it longer than you. My program's a perfect place for that, right? There's a lot of online resources at this point, but don't try to figure this thing out on your own. It's a puzzle that really do require some external help. The time is going to pass anyway. Whether you learn things incorrectly or correctly, the time is going to pass. It's better to wake up knowing that you spent the last 5 years learning things the right way than to realize you spent the last 5 years learning things incorrectly. So some of the practical things you can do is to get periodic coaching for postures, fingers, voicing technique. If you're not able to enroll in a consistent program, submit videos for check-in, for concrete corrections. So this is one of the things I offer over at pianolessonwithwarren.com is monthly student video reviews. Students submit videos of themselves playing. I go in, I give feedback, tips on how to fix certain problems, how to improve in other areas. And they also get to see what other students are doing and how I correct that as well. I went through that when I was in college. We had a similar class that is dedicated for that sort of feedback. You need it. You're not able to identify all the issues you're having. So you need that external feedback. You want to practice slowly, preferably, again, recording yourself so you can do self-audit. So while you're not able to pick up all the issues you might be experiencing, you will be able to identify some simply by watching yourself play. You'll be able to see certain things that you go like, I need to correct that. Or see how, or hear how you sound to be able to critique. Do I like what I'm playing? What can I practically do to fix these things? And then you want to apply these fixes immediately. Because again, you're trying to make sure that you unlearn any bad habits as soon as possible. This is a big one that many of you probably suffer from as well. And that is relying on external validation for what sounds good. This was something I suffered from in my early days because I started piano fairly late. I was just about graduating high school, starting piano from scratch. So there was a lot I didn't know, which made me insecure. And so I would only try something or practice something if I got external validation that it sounded good. And so what that did, it stifled my own creativity. I didn't want to try anything that I didn't know if it sounded good. Or I would play something and instead of saying, oh, I like the way that sound, I'd be like, I don't know if it sounds good. Thing is, I did know if it sounded good. I just didn't trust my own judgment. And so that I learned later on was a bad thing. By ignoring my own taste, I never developed a personal voice. Or I did develop my personal voice, but was later. Had I learned to rely on my own sound and my own taste, my own experience, I would have tapped into that personal sound sooner, which would have allowed me to explore, develop, try. I would have been able to learn a lot more, a lot faster. So what can you do instead? Build a taste playlist. This is a big one, right? Build a taste playlist. So compile like 20 of your best songs you really love, and then listen to them and study them. What is it about these songs that you like? Try to identify, is it the chord progression? Is it the type of chords that's used, the voicing, the tonality, the speed of the song? You're throwing a wide net and you're trying to just understand what you like about these songs. And that's the beginning of how you start to develop your taste, right? Things you can do is also like make small choices on purpose, whether it be voicing, register, dynamic, your pacing. And this is one of the reasons I always tell folks, my song tutorials are really meant to just give you the chords. What you do with them should be based on your own skill level, your competency, and what feels and sounds good to you. So I never tell people to learn my tutorials verbatim. You don't have to do the same notes with the same rhythm, with the same fingering. You don't have to use the same lick, the same run, because all of those things are interchangeable. And a lot of those things are based on my own personal taste and skill. So you always want to start to try to, fuse your own taste onto the things that you're playing from early, even if it's just small tweaks here and there. Eventually you learn to rely more on your creativity, your creative voice, your own taste. You can also record weekly review to train your ear, to understand your own preference. When you watch yourself play, you'll see the things that you do that you go, oh, I like that. Make note of those things and keep those things. That's part of your personality, your own soul that's shining through. And you don't want to keep that stuff on the lid. You want to dig deeper, let it out. It's also good to keep sort of a for me arrangement in constant development. I forgot which song I used to use, but it was one of the first songs I learned, and it became my sort of testing ground. Every time I learn a new lick, new chord progression, some new passing chord, some new voicing, I would test it out on that song. It was my song that's constantly in progress. It became my testing song because I knew it so well. So it was easy for me to execute and try things on. So it's good to have a song that you can always go back to for testing purposes. How many of you are a theory geek like myself? That leads us now to number 5. Placing too much emphasis on theory and technique while learning songs. This was the big one for me. And so the problem here is that I missed the big picture of how skills connect to actual music. For me, I was always trying to understand the why this work, how this work. And while there's definitely a positive side to that, being able to understand what you're doing, if you get too obsessed with the why and the how things work, you miss the big picture. Because remember that music is art. Theory comes after, not music comes after, theory comes first. That's like, as they would say, putting the cart before the horse, right? The horse goes before the cart, the horse pulls the cart. Same thing, music is always changing and evolving and developing, and the theory lags behind, because the theory is just there to explain what is being developed. And so because I was constantly living in the past, so to speak, trying to understand the theory, I didn't explore enough. I didn't try new things. I didn't just let my ears lead me and guide me. Because if I didn't know something, I just ignored it. I didn't try it because I didn't understand the theory. It was a belief I had. I don't even know how I developed that belief that if I can't explain it, then I shouldn't play it. Terrible advice I gave myself. And so I missed a lot of opportunities. So what you can do instead is to do a more 50-50 split with your repertoire and your skill. The things you don't understand, keep playing them, keep practicing them. The theory will eventually catch up. Learn songs in full, from end to end. Whether or not you understand what's happening harmonically, theoretically, just learn the song. It helps your ear, and like I said, as long as you're being diligent with keeping up with your theory, eventually it catches up. And you'll be like, oh, so this is what I've been playing all these years, or this is what this means that I couldn't quite understood last year when I was learning the songs, right? Eventually catch up. You also want to extract like progressions and voicings from different songs, turn them into drills. So over at pianolessonwithwarren.com, I have a lot of little exercises that I create based on chords or runs or scales that is meant to not only help with the theory, but also sharpen your skills. So when you have to execute them in actual songs, you know what you're doing and you know why you're doing it, right? And you can also maintain a rotating set list. Learn, polish, reform, revisit. So it never has to do a sort of a one and done. You're constantly going back to things with fresh air, fresh perspectives, fresh ideas. The frequency at which you go back is going to vary based on your own preference, but never just learn and forget forever. There's something to be said about going back with fresh ears. I do that from time to time as well. Number 6, neglecting active listening. There's 2 types of listening: active listening and passive listening. Most of us, we do passive listening. That's where you're listening to a song. It's kind of in the background. You might be singing along. You're not really paying much attention to what's happening. You're just grooving around. And then there's active listening. As musicians, as pianists, you want to spend most of your time doing active listening. And active listening is also mentally taxing because it requires focus, right? So you might feel a little bit drained. Over time, you get better and better. It's kind of like it's a muscle you're exercising. Now, I can listen for a long period of time without getting mentally fatigued, right? And so part of active listening is being able to listen to a song and just zoom in on any particular voice or instrument. So when I'm listening to a band, I can just zoom in on the tenors while blocking out everything else. And I can switch focus, zoom in at the piano, and I can switch focus, zoom in at the bass. And by zooming in, I'm meaning I'm focusing on that instrument so intently, I can hear everything they're doing without being distracted by the other instruments. That takes time to develop that skill. I like to equate it to if you're watching a play, right, in a theater, in an auditorium, and it's dark, and they use those giant spotlights at the back to highlight different characters at different points in the play. So from the viewer perspective in the audience, you know where you're supposed to position your eyes at different point of the play because of that spotlight. That's basically what you're training your ears to doing when you do active listening. It's to be able to listen to a song and identify and isolate different voices, instrument, textures, tones. And if it's not something you've done before, it takes some time to get used to that. But that's the part of the active listening skills that you should be developing. So some other things you can do along that line is short transcription. If you're not actively transcribing, even at the beginner's level, transcribing simply means listening to something and figuring it out at the piano. You can start short with just a little melody here or a little chord there, but get into the habit of hearing something and trying to figure out what it is at the piano. You also, when you're listening, try to map songs. Understand, okay, this is the intro, this is the verse, that is the chorus, that is the bridge, that is the tag. You're sort of doing little analysis while you're listening to a song. So for me, when I'm learning a song, if I'm driving 20 minutes home, put on the song for the first time, by the time I get home, a good 60 to 70% of that song's already learned because I'm able to process a lot of information, the structure. I'm able to decipher most of the chords, depends on the complexity. In some cases, I can determine all the chords without even touching the piano. So being able to listen and start training your ear to identify different sections, identify things like common cadences, chord progressions, right? Little melodic lines. Can you identify a scale? Oh, that's a descending minor arpeggios. Oh, that sounds like the major scale ascending. Little things like that goes a long way over time in helping your ear. And when you're learning piano by ear, developing your ear is one of your most powerful assets. Number 7, one of the mistakes I made is being closed off to other genres and styles of music. And so the problem here is that I missed ideas, how chords are used, melodies, rhythms, and the feel across different genres and style of music. Not all music is the same. And so having that sort of wide exposure to how other style of music work really does influence the way you play, because you don't want to play everything the same way. And so if you want to develop a sense of variety of rhythms, variety of melodic lines, variety of chord progressions and movements, you should start listening widely. You can definitely pick and choose the style of music you listen to, right, based on your own conviction, but listen widely. So if all you listen is just gospel music, try to listen to gospel music, but in other styles or from other culture. It really does make a difference. Study different styles, genres, songs every month. Listen to a few every month. You switch different genres. And again, you're doing active listening. And then try to borrow ideas from these different styles and genres and see how you can incorporate them. Because again, you don't want to just leave it at the listening phase. Listen, but then take action. Try to add something that you hear from one of these genres, one of these styles that you go, I like that. Copy it. Again, that's what I do. And I'm always going to be telling you to do the things that I do, I have done, or that I wish I did when I was starting out, right? So that's how you build crossover vocabulary with patterns, with voicings, with groove. And finally, number 8, the thing I wish I did when I was just starting out and what I wish I could do differently, fearing to make mistakes and the fear of critique. We all suffer from that. Nobody wants to mess up in front of others. Nobody really likes critique. Sometimes critique can sting, right? It feels like you're being reprimanded by your parent. So it can be an uncomfortable feeling, but it's absolutely needed for growth. You need feedback. You also have to allow yourself to mess up. I know you want to spend all these hours in your room practicing and perfecting it before you showcase me, but reality doesn't work like that. You can never be fully prepared. Especially if you've never performed in public, you've never played out for others. Once those eyeballs start staring back at you, it's going to put you into a whole different mental space, one that you've never been in, that you cannot be prepared for. That you only deal with in the moment. And you got to allow yourself to go through those mistakes phase. Right? So you get comfortable making decisions on the spot. You get comfortable recovering from mistakes and moving on. You get comfortable with critique. So like over at pianolessonwithwarren.com, where we do these monthly video submissions, people get to see you play. The other students get to see you play. And then I also come in and give you constructive critique, practical tips and fixes how to address these problems. Some people are afraid because they're saying, I'm going to wait until it's perfect before I do a submission. But that defeats the purpose, because again, we talk about if you're doing things incorrectly and you don't know you're doing things incorrectly, you're reinforcing bad habits that you will then have to unlearn later. And if you don't, it's going to take you twice as long to make progress. So the time will pass. Might as well learn it correctly, or at least as much as you can from the get-go. And so some things you can do to help with this, again, post short performances. If you're in a program like mine, a closed community, and you want to post them with the imperfections included. Don't try to correct things. Like if you're playing, you made a mistake, don't stop and re-record. No, because you're trying to get critique. And again, I've been doing this for 22 years. So I'm very keen on knowing mistakes versus chronic problems. I could tell if you made a mistake or if there's something underlying going on that is causing you to make that problem. I'm able to determine that. I've been doing this long enough. So don't worry about mistakes and imperfections and slips, because that's not what I'm looking for. Right? You can also use a 2-step review process. What worked, what didn't work, and then try to fix what didn't work for the next time. So that's how you get better and better. Right? You can also do deliberate error drills. Take things that you're having problems with and turn them into little exercises to help you desensitize from the problems you're having, those chronic problems, right? Turn them into exercises. Perform for small groups regularly to normalize feedback. If your goal is to be able to play in church, play in a band, whatever it is, get accustomed playing in small groups. Start small, start easy, start manageable. You can't just leap from your house to the stage and crush it if you've never done it before. You're going to need to go up there and do it a lot of times. I guarantee you, it gets easier and easier each time you play out for others. So I would like to hear from you. What is one thing you wish you knew 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago? What is one thing that you did back then that you wish you knew not to do? I'd like to hear from you in the comments, because maybe I'll be able to take one of your comments as an idea to create the next tutorial. So let's hear in the comment section, what is it you wish you knew when you were starting out what you wish you could do differently. And maybe I'll do some further exploration alongside that. Now, if you're new here, be sure to hit the subscribe button, the notification bell. Little stuff like that goes a long way in helping the channel and help me to continue to provide these content over here. And if you're looking to take your piano playing to the next level with actionable feedback that helps you to move from beginner to advanced, help you to avoid a lot of the pitfalls that I talked about in this lesson, then I would highly recommend you check out pianolessonwithwarren.com. It's my private membership program where I've helped thousands of students from all over the world to achieve their musical goals. All right. Now, if you're looking for another tutorial right here on YouTube that will take you to the next level with some of the things we talked about today, check out this video right here. Until then, have a blessed week and we'll talk soon.